Warning, content not suitable for children. Listener discretion advised, yo.
Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order.
We needed a new world order.
And that great seal of the United States has on it, Novus Ordo Seclorum, a new order for the centuries, for the ages, forever.
Create a new world order.
The True World Order.
Get your brain fed.
You can definitely find the power to transmutation, if you will. There's really a fantastic gift being given to you in some of the most tragic times, and I know that's tough for some people to see and visualize, but a lot of people are never going to see.
I've got a new book coming out soon. I got two new ones coming out pretty soon, but one of them is on a concept I call divine order. And it's the basic concept that everything is exactly as it should be and everything is perfect in this moment. And once we start to realize that, then we start to get to have more pleasant divine order circumstances. But if we rail against and fight the stuff we don't like, then we're just kind of creating more of that. So once we embrace it and understand it, then things can start to become more to our liking.
So that leads me to I'm going to ask the first question. And by the way, the book, I absolutely love it. I've started working on my lists. It really, I guess what I want to say is I really appreciate it. And it feels like, in a way, you found a way to speak directly to the reader. And, there's a reason why, I believe that I found this book and I'm interviewing you tonight. And as far as what I felt when I was reading the book, I can't remember the last time I got goosebumps, a lot of goosebumps. And it really, I got emotional a few times. Just what you said, I think is a really, is a tremendous gift to humanity. And as somebody who is, trying to find their own way, and I was listening to your interview on Gnostic, is it Gnostic Radio?
Gnostic Warrior? Yeah,
Gnostic Warrior. I was listening to that earlier today, and just things that were said there. In life, for me, especially, I talk about the depths of depravity, what your work, your efforts, everything that you've kind of geared yourself towards, is a tremendous gift to humanity. And as somebody who, I appreciate that, I respect that, and I'm very glad that you're on here tonight with me. It means a lot to me, so thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So the very first, what you just said, I got it all. What were we just talking about? I was going to ask you the very first question of the book, and I already forgot it. Dang it. Oh, crikey. What was it? What we mentioned right before the Gnostic Warrior. I'm really kind of excited and nervous and giddy right now.
We got into the divine order thing a little bit. I don't know if that was...
Yeah. Well, it was right after that. There was a comment. I'll think about it when I come back to it. Dang it. What was it? Oh, it was going to be so good too. Crikey.
It might come to you.
Yeah. So, I've started, those are my Archon notes. I don't want that. Started working on my lists and whatnot. And the book, I thought it was fantastic. I thought there was real practical ways and means to incorporate some of this, the lessons or the teachings into everyday life. And good Lord, I'm having a brain fart. What I also felt was really awesome about it was it wasn't just about how to attract money. It was literally about, I'm a big believer in Hermetic philosophy. The universe is mental, the mind is all. There really were just themes like a self-help or how to change your life, change your mindset, and to grow into who you want to become. I guess the first question I have is, the world is a really strange place right now, obviously, and people are lost as they are going through their own awakening and trying to figure out who they are. What is your message for those folks who, might be clamoring or needing to hear something like how I felt when I read your book?
One thing I would say today, especially, I mean, this is a crazy. The world's been turned upside down, really. But what I like to remind people of is to just calm down and take a deep breath, because we're not dealing really with a physical world. We're dealing with a world of energy. And so this is really a spiritual proposition. And when we start to understand that, we can really calm down. We cannot be so fearful as a lot of people are. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty around, and we can become less uncertain, at least about our own prospects of having a comfortable and profitable, in the sense of we continue to learn and grow life in the face of all of this. And I like to remind people that whatever spiritual knowledge or understanding you have been able to gain up to this point, whether it's been from your religion, from mysticism, spirituality, quantum physics even, all of those lessons are still valid. I mean, you know what you know. And now's the time to remind yourself of what you know, because what happens is people become empowered with knowledge, and they're like, oh, wow, I create my own reality. And as the mystics have always said, and the quantum physicists are proving, this is all really an illusion to a large degree. Nothing is actually as it seems. And I'm the master of my own ship. And, the observer and the observed are not separate. And, thought creates material reality. And so we've got this wonderful, enlightened, spiritual view of life. But then something like, we have a big turn of events like we've had, and all of a sudden people forget everything they knew. Everything I was just saying, they knew it. They were telling their friends and trying to help people understand. All of a sudden they forget it. And it's because, this seems so real. So the whole idea of this is just an illusion, this is just a dream, mind creates matter, everything is unfolding out of our thoughts and feelings, emotions, and the images we're projecting outward. They forget all that. And it's like being an actor in a movie and forgetting that it's a movie and that you're an actor. And when that happens, then you're in trouble, because then you are completely at the effect of everything that's going on. And so I just like to remind people that just as, last year, 2019, everything was an illusion, and this was a spiritual proposition, and this is all leading to our highest growth and best good, no matter what it looks like on the surface. That hasn't changed. The reality of human existence and human consciousness and the power of consciousness and the supremacy of the human mind to mold reality, that's been true for hundreds, for thousands, for as many years back as there's ever been a human being. That hasn't changed. And that's really one of my main messages, is to just take a step back and remember everything that you know that you've forgotten in the last few months. A lot of people already know a lot of this. And if they don't, I encourage people, of course, to study up, hit the books, watch videos. There's a lot of people around. There's a lot of material that can help you to understand the true nature of reality. And it's nothing like it looks like. So if you know some of this, remind yourself of it. If you don't know some of this, then start to learn, because this is your salvation. Understanding and knowledge will save you from everything that would appear to be out to get you.
That's you are so right. And again, felt like you're speaking directly to me, because so quickly, things that knowledge we've amassed over, I began looking into the conspiracy, 15, 16 years ago. And for the first 8 or 9 years, I was listening on the Gnostic Warrior about how immersed I was in just nothing but darkness. just because it's hard to ignore it, but as I've gotten older, it's like, listen, how can I maybe still acknowledge that, but find a way to shine some light on that, or bring some light down into that, as you said in that interview. Why is it? Why do we people, humanity? Why are we just conditioned that way? Is it our reptilian brain? Is it society? Why do we quickly just toss aside everything that has kept us resilient and produce grit along the way? Why do we toss that aside so quickly?
Well, part of the problem is that we are, in a very real sense, dreaming. Okay, this is, as the mystics have always said, a dream world. And that's fine. It's as it should be. It's in divine order. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. The problem, and it's not actually a problem, but the issue is that most people don't remember that they're dreaming. In other words, they have forgotten. Therefore, they're taking everything at face value. And that's the problem. There's no problem with the circumstances. The circumstances aren't even real. Mm-hmm. The deeper you get into it, in quantum physics, you learn that the concept of non-locality. So even the illusion of space and of distance, it's not there. Time is an illusion. There is no past. There is no future. Everything's in the one moment, and everything is being projected from the observer. And what we're seeing is ourselves. We're in the middle of mind because there's nowhere else to be. There is nothing actually physical. And the problem is not that we're having a dream. It's not that we're in mind. It's not that there's all these experiences, some pleasant and some unpleasant. That's all just what it is. The problem is one of perspective. If we understand that we're dreaming, then we're good. When we forget, then that's where we have our problems, and most people have forgotten. And so they're treating everything as if it's very, very serious, as if it's life and death. In reality, there is no life and death. There's only consciousness and perspectives and fields of energy. Before I came into this, physical body in this so-called physical realm, I had a different main perspective. When I leave this body, in the process we call death, I'll be viewing things from another part of myself. It's all me. And so it's totally a spiritual proposition, and most people do not have a strong enough spiritual bent or interest and a viewpoint. So if you're living in the material world and playing the game of life on the material playing field by its rules, then you've got a big problem. And that problem is just going to be strife, turmoil, fear, and all of that. Now, you pan out just a little further, and that's not a problem either, because that's what you signed up for. You see, you already knew. I mean, there's nothing that's bad. There's nothing that's wrong. There is just what is. From the human perspective, we can call it desirable or undesirable, pleasant or unpleasant, and each one of us gets to determine what that means for us, and to be challenged to use our minds to create and be aware of more of what we deem positive and pleasant and desirable, and less of the opposite of those. But it's all completely in our hands. We have the power.
And there is a chapter in the book, the self-image chapter. In this, now I've taken notes, and these notes are a little bit all over the place, so forgive me. But the importance of what you imagine yourself to be. And I know that you referenced the Bill Hicks quote in Gnostic Warrior. What is it? Where he says, "All energy is merely, or all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow, vibrating, moving, something of whatnot. Life is." Or there is no such thing as death. Life is a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves. My question on that is, the difference between, how do you see the difference between confidence and ego? If that, I guess if that makes sense. I've always wondered that.
Right. Confidence versus ego. That's a good question. Now, any confidence that is based in experience, I think, is rational and valid. Even though there's always going to be ego involved, because, guess what? As an individual human being, that's our perspective, right? We're an individual. This is me, and that's them, and there's a separation between. And so if I'm a good pool player, let's say, and I'm going into a pool shooting, pool game tournament, and I'm really, really good, well, I'll have a certain amount of confidence. And that's based on reality, but only in the physical dimension. So any confidence that I have about anything in this life is formulated from my physical human mind and my ego perspective, is really false confidence, because it's based on a belief that what I'm seeing is even real to begin with. It's based on a lack of understanding of my true position in reality and of what reality itself is. So all of that kind of evaporates. The only kind of confidence that I'm really interested in is a confidence that is based in reality and that can never be shaken, and that is not based on ego in any way, shape, or form. And that, quite simply, is spiritual confidence. It's a confidence that is born of a spiritual understanding of one's self and also of reality at large. And it sounds like two different things, oneself and reality at large, but it's actually, there's no separation. If I understand myself fully, and by the way, if I do so, I'm not doing so from my human brain. The concepts I'm discussing right now are beyond that of my human brain to actually come up with, conceive, and understand in a meaningful way. Because as a human being, all I have to work with is this fleshly vehicle and this brain of mine, which every breath I take, I'm breathing in poisons, every sip of the cleanest water, everything I eat, I'm in a chemical laden, room. There's chemicals and everything in my environment. So how clearly can my human brain think? Not that clearly. But when we can rise up into a higher part of ourselves, which is actually our spiritual selves, which is actually the universe at large, God itself. Because the further we pan out, we come to understand and find that there's actually nowhere to stand. There's actually nowhere to view from, because there is no separation from that which we are trying to view and from the viewer that we perceive ourselves to be. So confidence, true, unshakable confidence that can never be undermined or proven wrong, is simply deep spiritual insight and understanding into the true nature of reality / self. And once we do that, and once we have glimpses of that, I mean, nobody in a physical body is going to live in that consciousness to the nth degree 24 hours a day. If you do, you'll probably just spontaneously combust and your body, won't be needed any longer. But for those who can have glimpses of that, you don't forget, on Friday, you haven't forgotten how clear you were on Monday, or however many days it's been since you really just got it. And you just sat back and realized, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to strive for. Everything is what it is. It's what it's going to be. The next moment is going to unfold based on every moment for millions of years which has led up to it. Everything that leads up to anything, that thing has to then unfold. There's no way around it. So to be negative, fearful, regretful, sorry, guilty, and all of that, once you pan out far enough, you're like, oh, I can let all of that go. I can let myself go, because I'm not what I thought I was. And I'm not even the person who's thinking right now that I'm not who I thought I was, because from the highest perspective, there's nothing to even think about. There just is. Everything else is just self having a dream, and most often not understanding that it's a dream. But the confidence I'm talking about, the spiritual confidence, which is completely devoid of ego and even sense of self, is just a grounding in spiritual reality. And the more grounded you become, the less you can really talk about it, because there's nothing to say. I mean, what are you going to tell people? Everything is perfect. Everything is wonderful. Everything's exactly as it's supposed to be. Everything has always unfolded and will unfold. And by the way, none of it ever happened. I mean, the more real we want to get about it, the more absurd it will sound to human ears on a human body that is steeped in a material world. But we're okay with that, because we know that that's all part of it too.
So the spiritual confidence, and this kind of ties back to what you were saying a few minutes ago about we are droplets in the ocean, and we've simply forgot that we are a part of that ocean. We've taken on the personification of the droplet, just disregarding or forgetting altogether that, hey, we're part of the larger ocean. But having said that, the spiritual confidence that you mentioned, could that be described or defined by the word, is it gnosis, which is what the Gnostics talked about, that the state of knowing or and the acquiring of knowledge or whatnot?
Well, I haven't studied up on that specifically from that perspective, but it kind of sounds like, anytime we're talking about the word knowledge, you can only know what is true. Now, you can think you know something, and that's a belief. And what you believe may and may not be true. So there is basically only the one basic truth, and really everything else is a falsehood. So it just depends on who you're talking to, how they want to slant the conversation, and what it is that you're discussing. Someone can ask me, do you believe in past lives? And I'll say, well, in my younger days, I was involved with a group where I was intensely, digging out, getting into my past lives. I actually got to a point later, I left that group, and a number of short years I was doing past life readings and giving people readings and all of this. But the further I got along, and the further into reality I was able to glimpse, first of all, when I really got that there's no time, that word past now is very problematic. When I really came to understand that this is, and by the way, I'm a lucid dreamer also, so in my nighttime dreams, I often wake up and become aware in my dream that I'm dreaming. So when I carry that awareness into this realm as well. But when I really got that this life is a dream, I mean, not like a dream, but a dream, just as much of a dream as my nighttime dreams, then I thought, well, if this life is a dream, how much more so past lives? You see, so the further you pan out, the harder it gets to point to this and point to that and say, I believe in this, I believe in that. I believe that things appear to happen sequentially in linear time. I observe that. That's my experience. But do I believe in linear time? No. I've talked about all of my experience and knowledge with past lives, and there's a lot of research too with, past life regression and children having memories of, the little village they grew up in and having all of this knowledge and all of that. And I believe every little bit of that. But does that mean I believe in past lives? Well, I don't believe in the past. I don't believe there is a past. And that calls everything into question. That calls the geological record, where geologists will study the earth to see what happened and when it happened. This calls
Carbon
everything
dating
into
and whatnot.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
carbon
Yeah.
dating, all of that. But
Mhm.
when we start to even just peruse the findings of quantum physics, I have come to the understanding that science is not discovering anything. Science is creating as it goes along, as each individual is, based on the questions they're asking, based on what they're looking for. So we're really in an infinite field of potential, and everything that could happen, that can possibly happen, is happened, has happened, will happen. And it looks like a lot of separate individual experiences, but there's only one experience, one occurrence being viewed from an infinite number of perspectives. And in the end, we come to find out, it's like we wake up in the morning from getting chased by the bad guys in the alley, and we're like, oh, thank God it was just a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually we wake up from this infinite number of occurrences that is actually one occurrence, a dream, but then we realize that it didn't actually occur, because for something to occur in reality, it has to be subjective and based on something that is valid at all times, and something that is not affected by perception and assumption. Well, guess what? There is nothing anywhere in creation that is not affected by observation and assumption and how we view it. How we view things is how they unfold. We're not viewing them as unfolding as thus because that's how they're unfolding. They are unfolding as thus because that's how we are viewing them. And so when we get into any discussions having anything at all to do with up or down, left or right or wrong, past or future, good or bad, it's almost a moot point. We can talk about it, and then we talk through it we get to find out that it's actually both left and right, and ultimately neither. And so there was nothing to talk about to begin with, but we have to talk to get to the point where we realize there's nothing to talk about, and we got to do something with our time, right? So why not talk? So it's just quite amusing. The further you can pan out, I just started coming up with that phrase last couple of weeks. The further, because I've been trying to think of a way to relay the concept. But the further you can pan out, the wider the view, the more you see, but ultimately the less you see, until you see nothing at all, and you realize there was nothing to pan. I mean, it's just it's quite a challenge. I got 2 new books coming out. One is on divine order. One is on thought power. So that'll be number 12 and 13. And I just look at each book as being another facet, another piece of the puzzle. Each book completely stands on its own, in its own right, but yet they also stack, and they also each fit into a place where, to fill in a gap or a question that may have been left before. Ultimately, we discover I'm not even here, and I didn't write any books, but I've got to be here and write books to bring, I'm really teaching myself, right? Mm-hmm. I'm writing the books that I need to read, and not just me, James Goy Jr., but me, everybody else, whatever their name may be. If any of these are books there to read, then they're going to read them. I don't have to be concerned about book sales or, how many people have read my book or any of it. The more people that read it, the nicer and the better. But I know that however many people have read whichever of the books to this point is exactly what should have happened up to this point, and it's all that could have happened based on everything that's come before. So we just do what we do, and we're still human, and we still get up each day, shower, get dressed, and all of that. But it's from a completely different perspective, and that'll bring me back to the spiritual confidence and to just the overall understanding of our real position in life. And when we start to get that, everything changes. It changes so much that it's like the old story. Probably listeners have heard this, but it's and you probably have. But there's let me see if I can remember. There's a young seeker walking through the woods or whatever, right? And he comes across he sees an old man who's a master, and the old man is carrying he's got one of those sticks across his thing, and he's got two big heavy things of water he's carrying. And so the seeker asks the master, I've been searching for you and hoping to find you, and I wanted to ask you, what's it like when you become enlightened? And so the master puts down the big stick with the heavy water, and like that. It's just wonderful when you become enlightened. And then the student asked him, well, what's it like after you become enlightened? And he picked up the heavy burden again and put it on his shoulders and started walking off again. So like nothing changes. Everything changes, but yet nothing changes. And that's part of the fun of it, and it's part of the lesson that we're in.
All right, you are there. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Drew World Order, and we are speaking to James Goy Jr., a best-selling author of How to Attract Money Using Mind Power, and the supplemental book, their companion book, How to Attract Money Attract Money Forever. James, you just mentioned something about pulling back or giving a different perspective, and a good example of this blew my mind because this happened just a few days ago. I do drone photography, and I had my drone like 400 feet or so, and I was a little bit outside of Lawrence, Kansas, where I live. And I sent some pictures of, the images I took, which is right outside of where I lived, and I've lived here for the last year, to some people. And almost every single one of those people, persons said, like, you're not in Kansas. That's not Kansas. It's not that beautiful. It's not that, Kansas doesn't look like that. And it really hit me like, wow, just a different perspective can totally change how you view things or where you think you are, just completely alter the mindset altogether. So that really rang true to me.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
When you realize that there's actually nothing to view, right? Then it's all perspective. There's if there's nothing to perceive, then all we're left with is perception, and that's where I've come to in the understanding of it, that the object of consciousness, the destination, and the vehicle are all the same. Consciousness is the objective. Consciousness is the destination. Consciousness is the vehicle we use to get there. When we do get there, we find out that that's where we've been all along, because we can be nowhere else. And then so people will ask, well, then what was the point of the journey? And I would like to say that, well, there was no journey. At the end of the journey, you find out you didn't go anywhere because there was nowhere to go. It's all about perception. It's all about, from our perspective right now, it's all about our individual understanding and how much of everything outside of us we can incorporate into us, and how much we can free ourselves up from concepts such as time and such as space and such as right and wrong and good and bad. We can free ourselves up from all of that, and that's where we start to actually be free. Because anything from the human perspective is a prison because when we're in it, we're not free to not be in it. And therefore, we are prisoners of our own device, and we don't even know it. But not knowing it doesn't make us any less bound.
It's interesting sitting here talking with you. Normally, talking about stuff like this, I would start to delve into the archons or the matrix or the stuff like that. But just the nature of your vibration, if you will, carries me elsewhere. I want to ask you the difference, or if you see a difference between acceptance of how things are, just accepting that, like you said, there's no good, bad, everything is as it is. Is there a difference between accepting that and surrendering to it? Because I used to lump those two together. And in the last year or so, it's like, I don't think those are really the same thing anymore. Acceptance, I think, is a little bit more powerful than surrendering.
Right. Well, when I think of surrendering, I think of disempowerment. When I think, and I, I've never been asked that before, so I'm just going with what comes to me. But to surrender, I mean, if you just think of the connotation, and I don't have the definition of the word. I love looking up definitions of words because you can really learn a lot. And in some of my newer books, it's all about I'm looking up definitions, and the truth is unfolding from that. But if you surrender, then you give up. Right? I mean,
Yep.
That's one of the connotations. And you have allowed something outside of you, even if it's good, even if you surrender to your higher self or whatever. There's almost an acknowledgement in there that you have given power to, or understood that there's something greater that now you are bowing down to. It's like one army surrendering to another army. And so I'm not as excited about that concept as I am about the concept of acceptance. Because if I accept something, now I feel completely empowered. I have been the person who has exercised my right, my ability, my prerogative, my option to accept what it is that is lying in front of me. Doesn't mean I like it. It doesn't mean I'm willing to live with it. It doesn't mean I'm going to surrender to it, quote unquote. But I've accepted it. And a lot of our problem, I think, as human beings is that we try to fight things or change things that we have not first accepted, okay? I mean, if I'm a drug addict, right, and I finally just surrender to whatever my drug is, like I have no power. I'm just going to surrender to that. Or I surrender to God and say, God, I can't do it, so you help me. Well, what if that doesn't work? Okay, when we accept that whatever it is we're looking at is what it is, that's different than surrendering to it. I can look at certain experiences or certain things that are going on in the world or in my own, personal sphere of people or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. I accept that. I'm not going to deny it. But neither am I going to surrender to it. I'm going to endeavor to transform it based on how I choose to observe it. And understand, it's important to understand that I am not trying to impose my will on anything or anyone outside of myself. I am basically accepting the me that has had this perspective and come to this face-to-face with this apparently objective outside of myself thing. And I understand that if I don't like what I'm looking at, it's not that I need to change. I won't surrender to it. I won't accept it, I can and will change it so that it doesn't affect me in ways that I'm not comfortable with, but really pan out a little bit and we see that I'm only changing myself. I'm only changing myself so that that's not what I see. And again, it's all about perspective. And so, people sometimes when they hear mind power, that I consider myself an advanced, and I've done some things. I've kept people from pulling guns on me, for instance. I didn't talk about that for
Yeah, I
many
heard
years.
that story. That's
Yeah.
yeah, wow.
And more than once, actually.
Yeah.
But I do talk about those things now because I think that for years I thought nobody's going to believe, nobody's going to believe this. So why should I even talk about it? But, finally I just said, I came to the point where I said, some people will, and those are the people that need to hear it. I might have lost my train of thought there, but
I'm sorry.
oh no, that's okay. Oh yeah, mind power. Some people think that like mind power has because I consider myself an advanced mind power practitioner. That's what I was saying. And people can assume that I am using mind power on other people. And in other words, I would consider that black magic. Like if I was trying to exert my will on someone, if there was a particular person that I wanted to do a particular thing, and so I project my mind power onto that person to try to bring about that person doing a particular thing so that I can get something that I want, I would consider that what most people would term black magic. The mind power, the way I use it is completely different. I do not try to orchestrate how anything comes about. I don't even try to orchestrate who plays the various roles to bring into being what I would like to see come to fruition in my own life. I exclusively keep my focus on the end results I want to obtain. And there is a part of me, let's call it universe at large, that knows much more, sees much more, understands much more than I can ever understand from this human perspective. And therefore, I'm not really able or qualified to say how things should unfold or who should do what. I am blessed with a human mind that has desires and that has aversions that can project out and make those things happen that I would like to happen, or stop happening, or cease happening, or lessen that I don't like. But I understand that I do not have to do anything other than to be at peace within myself, accept everything as it is, and not fight or resist any of it, and then fully understand that my vision of how I would like things to come about, no matter who it will involve or what it will entail, will come about if I hold that vision, relax into it, completely let go of the calendar and the clock, not be concerned about when it's going to happen, not even be concerned about if it's going to happen, because if it's not in divine order and in my highest best good and the highest best good of all concerned, then I don't want it. And I cannot know that in my physical brain, which is why I completely leave all of that up to the universe. But I have found invariably, time after time, year after year, decade after decade, that if I will set those intentions and have those visions and speak properly, speak as if those things have come about, and think as if, and the other techniques in the book there, everything will work out perfectly in its own time, in divine order, in divine time. And if things are not in divine time, they by definition are not in divine order. That's why I'm not concerned with how long things take. And no one in the process will suffer any undue loss, any unfairness. It's so bizarre. I mean, and I'm still, after all, after decades of doing this, constantly amazed, which you would think I wouldn't be amazed anymore. But the universe, the higher part of ourselves that knows all, is all, and does all, just has a seamless way of working everything out more perfectly than we could have ever orchestrated or even thought of, just beyond us. And sometimes it's things that are so simple, like you tell somebody, they'll say, oh, well, that's just a coincidence. Oh no, well, I can see why that would happen, because 2 years before you said this to her, but they don't understand that nothing would work out perfectly as it works out if that wasn't the mindset, if that wasn't what was put into play. We could be, we could be in a house ready to lose our house because of financial distress, and we can't pay our mortgage and all of that, whatever, and not know that 70 years before, the owner of that house, buried what today is worth $4 million worth of gold, right? The guy didn't trust the banks or whatever and stored all his money. And that's the position we're in as human beings in life in general. We are living in a poverty in that we are not having the great good and abundance and freshness, aliveness, positivity that we would like to have, yet we're literally sitting on more gold that can be used to purchase all of those. And in this case, we're talking about spiritual gold. It's right there. It's a few feet away from us. All we got to do is pull up a floorboard, and there it is. And I never thought of or used that analogy before, but that's, I think, a perfect analogy. That's our position. We're lifting one floorboard away from everything we want. It's right there. There's nothing in the way of it but our own non-acknowledgement and not knowing that it's there.
And James, I apologize because I know that I'm kind of we're focusing on themes within the book, but on a broader scale too, because I think it is important. It's money's the means to the end. It's how you get what you want in this reality or whatnot. But the mindset, the transmutation of mind, the mental capacity, the first principle of Hermetic philosophy is the universe is mental, the mind is all. What you were just talking about, the difference between acceptance and surrender. The definition of surrender is cease resistance to an enemy or opponent and submit to their authority, which is the definition. And as you were sitting here talking about, the difference between acceptance and surrender, I have all these topics on my list that I was going to talk to you about. Current life predicaments as a reflection of thoughts, tips on finding light in the darkness. How do you bounce back from adversity? Being the lone wanderer, where you are in your age development and how you compare yourself or where you think you should be. Are you behind? All that stuff like that. Just all those topics are thrown out the window when you just simply sit back, you view yourself from a different angle and just accept things as they are. So I find that fascinating. Okay, so one question I do have about the book I read. So how important is it it's almost like you can't do this half-ass, you know what I mean? You can't do some of the practices and then not do some of the other ones. Like, is that a counterbalance? Does that serve any purpose? If you're going to go and do anything in life, it makes the most sense to go all in because the universe kind of, I don't know if it sees you trying to cheat or whatnot, but how oxymoronic are human beings in the fact that we do certain things to help us, but then we don't do other things, whether it be the power of language, thought, anything the other chapters that were discussed in the book. How important is it to go all in, if you will?
Well, it's very important to give as much of yourself as possible to the process and to approach it from as many angles as possible. Okay, I'm glancing at the table of contents: desire, belief, expectancy, money mindset, money goals, think end results, think and feel as if, speak as if, act as if, affirmations, visualization, environment. We go down the list. But what I want people to understand is, I wrote the 20 chapters because each of these is extremely important. None of them should be completely ignored, but there will be some people who will be more visual than audio. They might be better at visualization than affirmations, for instance. But another thing that I want people to understand, and this is very important, is that you can take any one of these techniques. For instance, just randomly, think as if, think end results, chapter 6. And you can transform your life. You can take it like chapter 8, speak as if. If all a person started to do right now was to only speak in ways that bolster and give strength to what they want to create, and shy away from and not give any strength to what they don't want to create. When it comes to money, we would be talking to always speak as if what you want to be true about your finances either is now or will be true, and avoid speaking of anything else. Any one of these techniques can transform your life. But if you do it, if you go all in on thinking end results, if you go all in on speak as if, any one of these techniques can transform your life. But what I really want people to understand, it's not mentioned anywhere in the book, and I don't think it is. I haven't read the book in quite a while, but it's the synergistic relationship between the subjects of the 20 chapters. What I mean by that is, let's go back to chapter number 6, think end results. Well, if we're thinking about the end results we want, we're having images in our mind. That fits the definition of visualization. So without even trying, if we're thinking end results, we're actually visualizing those end results. If we're thinking end results, we're having the images of the things we want to create. We can look at chapter number 7, think and feel as if. We're thinking as if those end results will be what we want them to be. We're obviously and just automatically going to have the kind of feelings and emotions that we would have were those things real. Our subconscious mind doesn't know the difference. And as a natural outcome of thinking end results, thus thinking and feeling as if, thus visualizing the end results we want to come about, we will naturally start acting as if, right? Chapter 9. Without even trying, without having ever heard this phrase, without ever having read the chapter, we're automatically going to start acting as if, because our subconscious mind is going to follow the lead that we set in motion with our process of thinking end results. We're naturally going to start to think and feel as if. We're naturally going to start to have images of those positive outcomes. We're naturally going to start to act as if those outcomes are going to come about, because the more we entertain those thoughts and think those end results, the more our subconscious mind is going to believe that that's what reality is. The more we're going to start, jump down to chapter 13, just by attrition, just automatically start to organizing our environment in ways that go along and support what it is that we're doing, starting with chapter 6, thinking about end results. And we're building all of this up, and we having the images, and we're just going to naturally find ourselves organizing our physical environment to support that. So the point is, you can do any one of these, really focus in on that and go all in, and you're going to completely transform your life. But another important point that many people will miss unless you look a layer deeper is that you cannot just do any one of these, because you're automatically doing others. And that's what I mean by the synergistic value of the whole package. So does everyone have to study this book inside and out and give heart and soul to every single one of the 20 subjects. No, they don't. There's so much in here, and you can read this in a sitting or two. There's so much in here that, for instance, we could look at something like right livelihood, chapter 17. Now, the mind power principles and techniques work, right? So if we visualize, if we speak as if and whatnot, we're going to attract more money. I mean, it's just how it works. I mean, whatever we put in is what we're going to get out. But if we're doing that in ways that violate our own selfhood, meaning things that we find distasteful, then we're going to be paying a price for that, or we're cheating other people, for instance. So we can use, some of these can be used in ways that are not productive or overall. Yeah, they'll be productive for your bank account, but not for your soul and not for the experience of other people. So that's why something like right livelihood is extremely important. Again, self-image, like we don't want to leave any of these out, but water always seeks its own level. Like once I've written the book, like now I have no control over what each person does with it or how far they take it. But I know that each person will do what's right for them in the moment with any understanding they get from the book. And no matter what they do, I wouldn't judge it right or wrong or good or bad. It's all just experience. But it's all there. There's nothing lacking. I mean, the title of the book is How to Attract Money Using Mind Power. And that, when you come out the other end of this book with the few words I've written and with the 160 quotes that are included from other books, you can attest to it, right? You know how to do it. When you read the book, it's like, even if you never heard about this before, and it's the most foreign concept you could think of, when you come out the other end of this book, a day later or 2 days later, you know how to do this. Now, what you do with it, that's up to each individual, how they apply it. Because mind power, I've always said, is as much a science as it is an art. The science part is everything I've explained, and that it works in a certain way, and it works for everyone in that same way. And that's why we can term it scientific or science. It can be duplicated. The art part comes in because each person is going to apply the techniques and the understanding in their own individual way. So it is as much a science as it is an art. And we definitely don't want to leave the art part out of it, because that's where all the growth and the learning is.
I like I think it's in the afterword, the phrase learn, believe, act, and persist. Like that. And I've started reading it again, and I've got my list here. I've started doing some of the practices and whatnot. And you say early in the book, like very clearly, like just by picking this book up and reading these first few pages, you're beginning the momentum and the rhythm to kind of incorporate everything else. So, I think that's fascinating. I want to talk about this just real quick. Synchronicities. I had so many synchronicities when I was reading this, and I started to think to myself, like, is this a synchronicity or did I attract this? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think synchronicity, I mean, if we look at it from the perspective that experience is only and just that, experience. Like, there's nothing being experienced. There's only the process of experiencing. And so when we look at it like that, then the whole concept of synchronicity really becomes one of observation and perception, because it's how we are observing that is causing us to notice what we are noticing. So if a synchronistic action or something synchronistic, comes about in the experience, but we don't notice it, does that make it any less synchronistic? Or does it mean that it wasn't there? It doesn't. So synchronicity, again, we can discuss it on many different levels, but if we want to discuss it on the level where nothing has happened to begin with, then, and that we're making it up as we go along, and that it's unfolding from and caused, everything is caused by the process of perception. Everything we perceive is caused by the process of perception. If we could get out further than our flashlight shines or our headlights shine in the darkness, we can never get past that. You know, when you're going down a dark country road at night and the headlights are shining a certain distance, we can never go beyond what those headlights are showing at any given time, because it's not there until the lights get there. In other words, until we perceive it. And so therefore, synchronicity is, it's all a product of experience at a high level of spiritual cohesiveness and insight. Because if we could really, really, really just take the blinders off and see, I mean, really see, guess what? We will see nothing but synchronicity. That's all there is. There's nothing that is not synchronistic. And so the fact that we have glimpses of the synchronicity is a very, very good sign. And to the degree that we're not seeing synchronicity in other things, that's a sign that in those areas we are, it's like a horse with the blinders or whatever.
Yep.
You have to turn over here to see that, and until you do, it's in your blind spot. And so anything that does not appear to be synchronistic, preordained, unfolding in perfect order and all of that, it's just because it's in our blind spot. It's not because it isn't synchronistic or is not unfolding in perfect order. It's just currently in our blind spot.
And a good example of this, I like to talk about symbolism, and people all the time, I'll point something out with a symbol or a logo, a company's logo, and say, this is what it represents, this is what's in it. And it, to this day, every person that I talk to, they'll come back like, holy crap, now I can't look at that logo and not see that. It's like, that's exactly, the Taco Bell logo is the one that comes to mind right off the bat. And I have people all the time, like, ever since you told me that, like, that's, I don't see the bell anymore. I see what you've, said that it represents. And that's exactly what you're talking about there. So I want a follow-up question. If there's something, a situation in a relationship, anything in life that doesn't really provide those synchronicities, would that be our perception veering a little bit too far from source, if you will, as opposed to the things in life that do provide the synchronicities or the vibes, the goosebump feeling? Is that a good way to, I guess, gauge where you are in relation to your connection to source or the infinite?
Right. Well, it can depend on how you want to frame the concept of synchronicity. If we want to bind that concept to mean things that are positive, things we like, things that are unfolding in a way that we would like to, and all of that, if that's our perception of synchronicity, then, and if like we're in a relationship and all we see is discord, and we see that everything's a fight and nothing's unfolding, comfortably, or how we would like it to, I think that is the way I want to put it is, in the old days, when I was a kid anyway, I don't know, but you had television, right? And you had the antennas on top of the television. And so sometimes you had interference, or the signal wasn't, and you'd have to play with the rabbit ears on top of the TV, or it was like, black and white and all making hissing noise and all this. And so that's the way I look at this concept of synchronicity. First of all, I think I'm right in assuming that when most people talk about synchronicity, they mean in a positive way, like it's to their liking and they're happy that this is working out this way. I think that when we don't perceive synchronicity, in a given situation, it's like we have to adjust our rabbit ears because there's interference and there's resistance to the true picture shining through. And if we remove that resistance and we get those rabbit ears just right, then we'll see, oh, this is perfect in this moment. This person who doesn't have my best interests at heart, who I catch in a lie every other day, who's taking money out of my wallet when I'm in the shower, whatever it may be, this is divine order. This is perfect. This is synchronistic. This is what I have caused myself and allowed myself to attract to myself to experience. That's synchronicity. If everything is unfolding through the process of perception itself, if there's actually nothing being perceived, it's just a perception of stimuli or experience. And if that is all there is, then again, we come back to there is no such thing as anything that's not synchronistic. Every domino is falling perfectly. And when we can realize that this person is the absolute perfect person and everything they're doing is absolutely in divine order and for my highest best good in this moment in time, which does not exist, that is wonderful, because now I can be free of this. Now I can stop trying to change this. Now I can stop trying to change this person. I can relax. I can cease resisting. I can choose for myself that I want something different. And I can, whatever that means, I can pack my bag right now and go crash on somebody's couch or get a hotel room because I'm just that done with it and I'm done right now. But it doesn't mean there was anything at all wrong with what was, or with that person, or with the circumstances. There was nothing wrong, but it was not pleasant. It was undesirable, and therefore now we can adjust the rabbit ears, and it can be as easy as just packing our bag and bidding the person, goodwill and love and moving on. But I think that the whole concept of synchronicity is one that is overlooked by most people. Most people will experience synchronicity but not recognize it for what it is. So they'll call it just chance, the luck of the draw, some things happen. And then other people who believe in synchronicity will only acknowledge things that are desirable to them as being synchronistic. And so, but that's a level above the person who doesn't believe in synchronicity at all. In other words, they don't believe that there's any effect from human perception. They don't think that how we observe affects what we observe. That's one level. A higher level is where we recognize synchronicity, acknowledge it, are grateful for it, and appreciate it, but only when it's to our liking and we deem it desirable. But when we can get to another level now where that's all there is, good or bad, like it or not, it's all in perfect synchronicity. Every single moment of creation, every single aspect of every experience unfolds in the only way it can based on everything that led up to it. And when we really start to get that, and then there will be no more question of synchronicity because everything is synchronistic. It can be no other way. And now it's up for us to decide how we want to experience that synchronicity in our lives. And the more that we realize that we are actually the creators of it, then now we have the power. And it's people think that it's a lot of work and that it's a labor-intensive process, but it's actually a very passive relaxed process because it's twofold. There's two parts of ourselves. There's a higher part of ourselves that knows all and is all. There's this lower part of ourselves that has these human, wants and preferences. And when we really realize that we get to make the decisions here in this from this frame of reference, higher self, it doesn't matter. To our higher self, it does not matter if we are going through experiences we like or not. We're going through experiences that we're creating, so we have no room to complain. And our higher self, I like to say, knows that, but it has no sense of self. So it's a field of neutrality. It's all power. It doesn't care, but yet there's an aspect to it that is totally productive, in that anyone who's been living a spiritual life for any number of years just has to know and recognize, and will never argue the fact that it's always tending toward the good. It's always tending toward the positive. It's always tending toward growth and life and abundance, and not the opposites of those. But not because it has a personal preference to do that. It's because it is the basic nature of the intrinsic foundational substance of all creation. That's what it is, and that's how it operates. And so when we can sit here and understand that we can decide what we like, what we don't like, what we'd like to experience, and what we'd rather avoid, and live in the absolute, unshakable knowing, not belief, but the knowledge based on past experience, which has never been violated or shown to be wrong. When we have that knowledge, then we know that there's very little for us to do other than to decide what it is we want to see happen. Because in one sense, we're causing it to happen through how we think and feel and the actions we take. But in another sense, we're really just a vehicle for what is happening. Like, we are what is happening. We're not separate from the process of happening. And so it looks like we're making it happen. And when we talk about mind power, we say we can use our minds and our emotions and our images and words, and we make this and that happen and the other thing. But when you pan out even further, you see that you're just a part of something else that is doing that from another level. But in physical reality and physical bodies, we have to put words to things, otherwise we cannot share information. So we do that, but always understanding that no matter, in this conversation that we're having today, no matter how high we take it, no matter how wide we pan out, we always know that there's one level right behind that, where we're here and we think, oh wow, this is wonderful knowledge. This is, I love this. This is what I've always felt but could never articulate, and everything else. But we don't want to get comfortable in that, because that's a trap too. That is a trap too. We want to go beyond that, where we can see why all of that is happening, and why we're still making judgments of this is good and that's and bad, and oh, this is a higher understanding, and all that. Anytime we call anything, we have made it something other than what it is, because what is cannot be named. We cannot put a name or a determination or make a judgment on anything without intrinsically and foundationally in that process transforming it into what we're saying or thinking that it is.
And I call it what you just mentioned there, the cul-de-sac effect. As I see people that go down the rabbit hole, if you will, they'll get trapped into the first rung or second rung of the rabbit hole, and they just won't ever escape. They'll just be in that cul-de-sac. going round and round. So I think that's fascinating. Now, I'm going to be a little bit selfish and ask you a question regarding what you were talking about earlier about when you just accept whatever, if you get betrayed by in a relationship, or it's just not resonating, or you don't feel it. Are you, by choosing to stay a part of that, are you contributing to the continuation of those experiences, or is there a way to, by accepting it, are you by staying into that situation or relationship, are you encouraging the continuance of those experiences, or is there a way out of that? Can you have your bread, or what, can you have your cake and eat it too, I guess is what I'm asking.
Right. Well, if we understand that let's say we're talking about a person, we're talking about a relationship, and we start with the understanding that that person, let's call her Jane Smith, she is absolutely 100% with no qualifications perfect. She is a perfect Jane Smith based on where she was born and everything that she's experienced, and genetics and everything else. So just the whole package to getting her in front of you. Let's say you guys are you live in the same house or apartment. And so here we are faced with Jane Smith. And there's a lot of things that we don't like about this. And this person is not as honest as we are, or just whatever it is. First of all, we remember that she's looking back in the same way. Like, she doesn't think like you think. She thinks like Jane Smith thinks. And Jane Smith thinks that you're the problem. Like, you're the one that's causing all of this situation. So the spiritually minded person can look at Jane Smith and say, maybe some improvement can be made here. Maybe I can change Jane Smith to be more to my liking. But that's really kind of a fool's game and a losing battle. Anyone who really tries to intrinsically change someone else to be something other than what they foundationally are is just setting themselves up for, defeat. And so, but we can ask ourselves, am I okay with this? Because if you're okay with it, then there's no reason not to continue. Knowing that it's not going to drastically change, knowing what it is and being comfortable and saying, okay, I accept this, and that's the way she is. She's always going to put the knives in the strainer pointing up. When any fool knows, when you wash a knife, you point the point down. I've told her 1,000 times, she's always going to have those sharp points sticking up where somebody could, cut themselves or something. And I'm okay with that. So that's one level. Another level, I would say, would be to ask, why am I okay with that? Why am I willing to accept that? And can I actually live with all of these things without materially compromising what I am? In other words, does living in this environment, in the aura of this person, assuming you're living with the person, is what I'm getting from it worth the price I'm paying for it? And that's a big question, because if you're in a small mountain cabin in the woods, and it's 2 feet of snow and freezing outside, but you've got a nice warm fireplace going, and so the house is nice and cozy and warm. Outside is freezing, bitter cold. If you open the front door, what happens? The cold air starts rushing in, and the hot air starts rushing out. And if we put the fire out, what's happening there is the hot and cold are endeavoring to equalize. And so if we stop the source of the heat and we leave the door open, it won't be very long before there's an equilibrium attained between the hot and cold. The hot's going out, the cold's coming in. And so that analogy I like to use to explain when any two people interact, there are no two people on the face of the planet or anywhere in creation who are at the same spiritual level. And so if someone has more spiritual insight and development, then they are what we can call a higher vibrational frequency. And the person who has less interest in spiritual matters, less understanding and insight is as a lower vibrational. Well, when these two people come together in relationship, you've got the hot and the cold, and they will always be tending to equalize. So when one person is with another person who's at a much lower spiritual level of development, the energy interaction is such that the interplay of energy will always be that the one is pulling the other down and the one is pulling the other up. So the person who is at a higher spiritual level will suffer to some extent because they will be pulled down. The person at the lower spiritual level, even if they have no interest in spiritual matters at all, will be benefited because they will be pulled up, but they can only be pulled up so far. So we try to pull them up as far as we can without us being pulled down as too much as a result. But here's a thing to keep in mind, is that what if we live with this person for 3 years and the energies have equalized? You've been pulled down, she's been pulled up, but now you go and you leave and you go off in another direction in your life. Is her higher relative spiritual foundation now based almost strictly and exclusively on the fact that she was within your aura and presence, not by her own volition, not by her own interest, not by her own learning, but she is at a higher level now by simply proximity to a higher vibration? Will she maintain that level if it is through no volition and interest of her own? And the answer is absolutely not. She will drop like a stone and in 3 weeks be back to the spot that it took you 3 years to raise her up from. And so there's a lot of things to consider. Is there a right or wrong way to go in such a situation? No, because if you or anyone stays in that situation understanding what's going on, then it's all good. It's all experience. But, you know, we always want to look further out and see, well, what is the consequence of this? If I stay with this person for the rest of my life, let's take it out to its logical end, if we continue in the exact scenario we're in, then at the end of my life, I will be less and have accomplished less and helped others less and all of that than I could have. And the person that I gave all of that up for is going to retain none of what she extracted from me by the sheer fact of proximity. And so in that case, if we're looking at it from, and we can look at it from any point of view we want, but if we're looking at it from that perspective, then we might say, well, maybe it's selfish of me, or maybe it's not very, I'm not thinking of the word, to deny the rest of the planet and billions of people, because remember, anything that any does, thinks, says, everything affects the whole. So was it fair to me to deny the whole what I could have contributed were I not to have devoted myself to just trying to survive this other person. In other words, if my mind would have been free, if my energy would have been free, if I would have gone off on my own or found someone more suitable in energy. And we'll never know, like what could have been, what did I not do, what synchronicities in a positive sense, spiritual sense, did not come about, what was the basic nature of the overall vibrational reality of that dwelling that we shared, and what did that do to my abilities to do what intrinsically I'm able to do and what perhaps I came here to do, because it's all subjective, right? There's nothing objective about any of it, and we can look at it however we want to look at it. Some people might say, this is what I want to do. But I would always say, well, just look a few layers in and just understand and find out why. Is it just because it's easier? Is it just because you don't have enough faith in what you could be and do? Is it just because you don't really understand the dynamic of the energy that's happening here and of how it's pulling you down? Really look at every aspect of it that you can look at to come to an understanding, and then as an autonomous thinking human being, make your own decision about what it is that you think is right and positive. Because I absolutely know from past experience, I mean, I've been in one relationship now for 38 years, I guess, but several before that. And I just absolutely know without doubt that no matter how strong or powerful or insightful or any of that I think I am absolutely going to be profoundly affected by that key other significant person that I have in my life, whether it was my girlfriend when I was 16 years old, another one when I was 18, when I was 19, and now I'm in California. It's a different woman for 5 years. I'm profoundly affected, and my life goes in a trajectory that is highly, highly, highly influenced by combining mine with this person. And so I think one of the most important decisions we make in life, not only in our main relationships, like a significant other, but in people in general, one of the most important things that we will do is to determine, either consciously or just by, laziness or whatever, who we're going to be around, who we are going to interface with, what levels of consciousness we're going to have affecting us on an ongoing basis. Because a human consciousness is one of the most profound, powerful, and impactful units of being that there are. And so every single person affects us in a profound way, based, and especially based on how far we let them in, how close we get to them, how intimately we entwine ourselves with their energy on a day-to-day basis. It's profound. It's you could almost say it's everything. I mean, the right person with the wrong person is now the wrong person, because nothing's going to happen that could have happened otherwise. So it's a very big subject. You can approach it from many different angles and look at it in many different ways. It's a matter of perspective. It's all experience. There's no right or wrong. It is what it is. But there are many, many ways to look at it. And in that perceiving and judging, making human judgment based on our likes and dislikes, there's a lot of power that can come from that.
Again, I don't know why, but I want to say I appreciate that answer very much. Like that provided a tremendous amount of insight that I've been searching for quite some time. And you hit a few themes that, and I'll just relay this to the listeners. I guess, are you willing to, if you feel like you're here for something, you feel like you do have a destiny or purpose, are you willing to sacrifice that for the, what's more important, I guess, is what I'm saying. Because there are, like you said, there's billions of people on the planet. One person who might not hear that message, is that more important than, a few hundred, 1,000, 1,000,000 that will appreciate and resonate to that message? So I guess that's where the power of choice and being aware or cognitive of your own perception or the power to perceive is really really hits home. That
Right.
and you're right. I'll be the first to say I'm guilty about synchronicities are only the good things, but I got goosebumps when you were talking about that, about how the synchronicities are, it can't be just limited to just that. So that's find that fascinating. Yeah, that's just okay. So sorry, that just totally blew my mind. It was just like having a little bit of a moment of clarity. What do you think that we could do this more often? Like, I'd love having you on the platform.
Oh,
Like,
I'd love to. I'd
yeah,
love to. I've been on a lot of shows multiple times. My record thus far is 53 times on one show.
wow.
Yeah. So I love doing. I like longer interviews for one thing, because you can relax and get further into the subject matter. But also, it's really great when you can have repeat follow up and even ongoing sometime, because just there's, as you can tell, the onion has an infinite number of layers, and so the more we talk, the more we're getting in sync with reality, and the more we're syncing together our minds, and so future conversations can and will be very, very fruitful. So I'm totally open to that as much as we can do it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I absolutely. Like, I mean, I'll get with you after we get done recording here, and I'd like to get you on here again, like, as soon as possible. I know that we have till 9. I booked myself for an open mic night. I'm trying some stand-up comedy.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
cool.
so I've been reading these. Jordan Peterson says, do one thing every day that scares you. And then Roderick Edwards' book was, if you offered an opportunity, which I was, like, just say yes to it, no matter how bad you don't want to do it or whatnot, you're going to learn from it. So, yeah, I would love to have you back on. Like, I could see this being an ongoing, like, I rarely learn from another human being as much as I'm learning tonight. And I appreciate that.
Wow, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, I would love to have you back on, like, multiple times. Like, I think that's, yeah, that'd just be awesome. Okay, so what's the name of the new book that is coming out? Yes, you said you have 2 new books coming out.
Well, I won't give the full titles. I never do until they do come out. But I do have 2 books right now. I have 4, but 2 are much closer to getting ready. And the main keywords in the one are divine order, and the other is thought power. And so those are the main phrases from each of those titles. And right now, things are hard for people financially and in a lot of ways. And so when these 2 books come out, they will actually, it takes a couple of weeks to go through the process, but they will be free in the digital formats on Kindle and Kobo and Barnes and Noble and whatnot. And in fact, if people want to go search, most of my books are right now. They're 100% free in Kindle and Barnes and Noble and places like that. So I like people to read what I've written, and I think I've made it as easy as possible right now, because there's no financial barrier in the way. And I also recognize that I have a good number of books, and a lot of people can't just go out and buy 10 or 12 books, even if they're inexpensive books, even in digital formats. So if people are interested in what we're talking about, or they think I have something that can help them, then download all the books before, if and when they do have a price. I don't know what will happen. I'll follow spirit and guidance on that. But just right now, they can get, basically they can get 10 of the 11 books for free on all of those platforms. And the only book that still has a price on it is Track Money Forever, but they can get that one for free in PDF when they sign up for my free monthly Mind, Power, and Money e-zine on my website.
I was just looking at that, literally just looking at that. I was going to ask you to plug your website and the social media and stuff like that.
Right. Yep. And of course, I'm on a lot of social media, but I haven't done much with a lot of it, but Facebook and Twitter, but I have links to those from the website as well. And I encourage people to come join me in those places.
Absolutely. And like mine's, people that are out there, I've been talking to a lot of people that are going through some sort of awakening, and they're confused, they're scared, they're bewildered. It's like deer in the headlights look. There's tools, resources. There's people out there like James who have devoted their experience as a human being to the betterment of the entire civilization, or just to the expansion of consciousness. And these are the people that, rather than, the darkness, there's a lot of dark things out there. There's a lot of weird things happening, and it's important to be cognitive of that. But where the real true vibrations, the frequency of, in the infinite or love is stuff like this and James' work. So I would just say that, take advantage of that. Go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/James Goy Jr. And I will list all the rest of the social media in the show description and the show notes as well. But James, do you have any final words or final thoughts for the world or whatnot before we log off here?
Well, I'll just wrap it all the way back around to where we started and say, sit back, take a deep breath. Everything is fine. Nothing has changed in reality. Reality is what it's always been. Learn what that is, and you'll know and experience the fact that everything is okay right now, just as it is. It's working all towards our highest, best good, and knowing that will help us get there sooner. Each person that knows that helps us get there sooner.
I resonate to that. I think that a lot of other people will too. James Goy Jr. is our guest tonight. For the Drew World Order, I am Drubert, and the professor is on vacation right now, but we will see you next time on the DWO.